those of us who live in water-rich countries like Canada, like Germany, have not had to deal with this yet, right? It's been an issue far away. It's in poor countries far away. Well, I have news for us all. That water crisis is coming here. So we better get our act together. We better sit down and say this is very serious, and we have caused it as humans, both from the climate crisis, but our abuse and over-extraction and damming and diversion and pollution of water. We have created this. We can do something about it. Really good information can scare the hell out of you. What do they say? If you're not concerned, you're not paying attention. So learning about the climate crisis, learning about struggles around the world can be very hard if you have a heart, if you have a soul, if you have compassion. That can be very hard. And what I want to say to young people is don't think you have to take it on all yourself. What can I do? What part of this can I put my hand out and touch that I can make a difference? And you have to have faith that others are doing the same, that there are young people all over the world who care the way you do and are making a change and are making a difference. Hello, my name is Maude Barlow. I'm a Canadian activist and author. I've been very involved in the human right to water. I was very involved in getting the United Nations to recognize that water and sanitation are fundamental human rights. I've written many books and done a lot of work building a global water justice movement. Who owns water is really important. Basically, no one should own it. We all have a human right to access to it, but it also belongs to the earth, it belongs to nature, it belongs to other species, and we humans have to remember that it's not just water serves us. Even if we say it's got to be equitable, it's got to be equitable to other species and other life as well. First of all, it's really important to learn about the situation and not just assume that somebody else is looking after water or nature for that matter, because not necessarily actually. It's really important to ask the questions around who has access to your local water source. What is your local water source? Do you even know where you get your water? Do you know how it's cleaned? Do you know how it's paid for? All of these are very important questions. Is your water run by a private company or by a municipal public service? That really matters as well. You can become an activist to an extent on your own, fighting against plastic bottled water or fighting against a local pollution of a local watershed or whatever. But it's really important to get involved with others, particularly in an organization that can then have more power if you do it together. I became an activist. I came out actually involved in the women's movement earlier than the water justice movement, but they're very similar now because in many countries it's women's responsibility to find the water, to walk many kilometers to find the water, so it kind of came back. But on the water issue, it really, I looked at it in the question of the whole issue of economic globalization, which was very, very prominent in terms of government leaders and corporate leaders and think tank people in the 1990s and the first, I'd say decade of this century. It was like the Bible, right? Yeah, governments were too big and you had to give everything over to the private sector. You had to deregulate rules around the environment so that trade could move across borders. You had to privatize services like water, like in some places like healthcare, even education. So the pendulum was swinging way over to one side. And it's hard to look at one issue like water without looking at that big picture that was including water and saying water should be a tradable good, water should be put on the open market for sale like running shoes or like oil and gas, and let the market take care of it. So having a political analysis about the big picture helps you to situate the struggle for water justice in that. And we who come from more water-rich countries like Germany, like my country, Canada, have a responsibility to see what our governments are doing. Are we taking advantage of the water crisis in other countries to import things that need water? We don't care what happens there. So it's not just a case of one particular watershed or one particular injustice. It's a case of looking at the system and then saying, what can I do? Where can I fit? And for many people now, it's fitting into this project called Blue Communities, where you can do something local to promote water justice, human right to water, to fight against the plastics tsunami that we're dealing with, and to find other people who are concerned about the same issues. Well, we all have to take responsibility for caring about and protecting water, but we also need good laws. Martin Luther King said, "Legislation may not change the heart, but it will restrain the heartless." In other words, if all of the corporations were good and did all the right things, maybe you wouldn't need strong laws. But if this corporation wants to be good and this corporation doesn't, and they want to dump their toxins into the water and they want to exploit their workers, then you need the rule of law, because if you don't have it, this bad corporation is going to make lots of money destroying local water, selling local water, privatizing it, and so on. So we do need good governance. We need it at every level, at the municipal level, at the state or provincial level, at the federal level, and we need it at the international level. International agreements around things like transboundary waters, maintaining public governance, good governance, democratic governance over water, treaties that respect and understand the need to protect water, because so many lakes and rivers cross political boundaries, right? They don't, the fish don't care if they're swimming on one side or the other. You've got to protect them. So in the end, while we're all responsible to some extent, we need good governance. And that's why it was really important for the United Nations General Assembly to recognize the human rights to water and sanitation back in 2010, and for many constitutions in different countries to be amended so that this human right is there for the people for all time. But it's a never-ending challenge, really, because there's always new players, new demands. As the UN says that the demand for water is going straight up and the supply is going straight down, there's going to be more struggle around the existing water, clean water, accessible water that we have on the planet, and we need to set very strong rules of governance about who has access, about you don't have the right to pollute. Polluter pays if you do pollute. We need very strong kind of legislation around this, and we have a right to ask this of our governments, and we need to do that. I think in many ways we now live in a more conscious world about water. For a long time, water has been a subset of climate. And what I mean by that is we all know that the climate crisis is caused by greenhouse gas emissions and other pollutants. And so the concentration has been on lowering those greenhouse gas emissions, and that's good because it does impact water. But it's often seen as if you do that, then everything will be fine with water. And that's not the case. We could end every greenhouse gas emission in the world tomorrow. We would still have a water crisis. So it's very important that we have this kind of consciousness. And being at the United Nations big conference on water, the first in almost 50 years, last month in New York City, it was really good to hear that there's growing consensus that we have a water crisis, that we have to take care of water better, that we need better transboundary intergovernmental cooperation, that we need to look at water as an agency of peace as opposed to conflict and war, that we need to ensure and promote the human right to water. This was language that came back over and over, and I tell you, I don't think we would have heard it had that conference happened 10 years ago. It was so new in 2010 that water was a human right. Lots of people didn't agree. Lots of powerful institutions didn't agree. So I do think we've advanced in our thinking, but it's also, let's face it, those of us who live in water-rich countries like Canada, like Germany, have not had to deal with this yet, right? It's been an issue far away. It's in poor countries far away. Well, I have news for us all. That water crisis is coming here. In Germany, the groundwater is being exploited far too quickly. The melt from the glaciers in the Alps is going to affect, obviously, Switzerland first, but it's going to affect many, many countries in Europe. They are now talking about the driest potential summer in the history of Europe, and the drying up of the major rivers like the Po and the Rhine. This is just incredible. This is unheard of. And so we better get our act together. We better sit down and say this is very serious, and we have caused it as humans, both from the climate crisis, but our abuse and over extraction and damming and diversion and pollution of water. We have created this. We can do something about it, but we have to have that deep commitment to understanding what the problem is and knowing what to do about it. And that's why I call this wise hope. You look the situation in the eye, you say, I see it, I know the stats, I know what we're dealing with. I'm not pretending it's not here, but we can do something about it. We created this problem. We're smart. We can do this together. So it's really important that we have hope and that we see progress and that we're happy when governments do what we ask them to do. Sometimes we just keep criticizing them anyway because, well, it's just more fun to criticize. But when they do what they should, we should say thank you. Yes, you did the right thing. And we can advance. I am hopeful because, first of all, I think hope is a moral imperative. I think coming from not only a water-rich country, but a country where I can speak my mind and not be put in jail for it, I have a responsibility to speak for those on behalf of or supporting those who can't speak because they can't speak publicly without recrimination. So it's really important that we build this movement and that we think blue. I say to people, you're thinking green, think blue too. I guess I really want to speak to young people because, I don't like this kind of, well, we're sorry, we created this mess and I hope you guys are okay. I'm going to go off and have my retirement and, spend my money, and you guys are going to live with the housing crisis and the climate crisis and all of that. It really is an intergenerational struggle that we're in, and we need each other. We need the voices of youth and the passion and the energy of youth, and youth need the lived experience of people my age who can tell you what worked and what didn't in campaigns and so on. But what I worry about is that you can get overwhelmed. The media is so powerful and the internet is so powerful, and the amount of information coming at us. There's bad information, there's bad conspiracy, there's lies. Obviously, I'm not talking about that. Really good information can scare the hell out of you. What do they say? If you're not concerned, you're not paying attention. So learning about the climate crisis, learning about struggles around the world can be very hard if you have a heart, if you have a soul, if you have compassion. That can be very hard. And what I want to say to young people is don't think you have to take it on all yourself. Don't burn yourself out. Don't jump into it and say, I have to get this done, and if you don't, you failed. You didn't fail. You're not failing if you don't get a particular campaign. You're building a movement. You're building activists. You're learning. You're sharing with others. You're building a more compassionate, more dedicated society, a society that cares, and a society that's going to do that for the next generation. And the more we do that, the more hopeful we can be. So I don't want anyone young taking in this notion of, oh my God, it's too big for somebody like me. What can I do about all this? You can do everything you need to. When you say, what can I do? Go home and look in the mirror, you know, and say, what can I do? What part of this can I put my hand out and touch that I can make a difference? And you have to have faith that others are doing the same, that there are young people all over the world who care the way you do and are making a change and are making a difference. I feel great hope, and I think this generation is, and I mean this sincerely, the best generation. You have the most knowledge, you have the most access to knowledge, and we can work together to put it to good use.